How hard was it to get a teaching job right after you graduated? And then did you apply to a lot of schools like this?
I was fortunate because I was already an employee of my district in a different capacity. So I had already made some of those connections. Some of the people in my district already knew who I was, and had already seen some of my work ethic and my willingness to kind of adjust and roll with the flow and work hard to achieve whatever it was that we were going for, the common goal. So as far as me personally transitioning, I had a fairly easy transition. But the first position that I got, that I obtained, I found out later there was something like 200 applicants for that spot. And I've heard of 250, 260 applicants for one teaching job, depending on what field it's in, where it's at, what subject it's teaching. So it can be very competitive. That's a very good question.
It was very similar for me. I got pretty lucky the same way. Going back to what you said, connections, that's huge. So if you are really interested in becoming, being in the education field, I would suggest starting to sub as soon as you can in a district that maybe around here, maybe around where you live if you're able to. I worked in after school or a summer program, after school program when I could. That's really big, is getting those connections, because when they see you working, you can sit in on an interview and tell them all of these great things, have a great interview, but they ultimately want to see if you can put your money where your mouth is. So can you do it? Can you walk the walk? So that's good if you can get out, put yourself out there. And like he said, it is based on the want for the job. So unfortunately, maybe for like a middle school math position, there may not be a lot of positions. So you said you wanted to go in for math, which is awesome. I know elementary schools usually get a lot more applicants than middle or high school. I've heard that English departments get a little bit more than math or science sometimes. I don't know if that's true. I've heard that. So I think it just depends on where you are and what you're wanting to apply for based on the positions.
But you're in college now. It's not too early to start working on those experiences. So some of the things that helped me, I know going into a classroom, the biggest thing I want to be able to do is connect with my students. Because if I can connect with them, then it'll make what I'm trying to teach them or what I'm trying to give them or help them with, it'll make it that much easier. So how do you go about connecting to kids, and how do you go about connecting? Some of the things that help me, volunteering in my community, working with the school system. So it might not be teaching, but they're always looking for good bus drivers or bus aides or substitute workers. I remember my mother-in-law, when I first went back to school, she came to me and said, look, they're hiring bus drivers. And the first thing I said was, no, thank you, because I remember riding the bus not too long ago, and I know how we treated the bus driver, and I don't want to be that guy. And then the more I started thinking about it, in a classroom you have 20 to 30 students, ballpark. On a school bus you have 60 to 80 students. So one adult. Your classroom management skills have to be a lot sharper on that bus because you're rolling down the road than they have to be in the classroom. And then, I mean, that's bad to say, but it's true. Yeah, I have to teach in the classroom versus drive on the bus. But I started thinking about it. If I could survive that, I could survive any classroom they can put me into. But after I started driving, I really saw the impact that a bus driver has on their students and how important that job actually is. So it's not too late to get involved. I'd start getting involved now, make those connections, and work on honing your skills.
Besides that you name connections, you know like any other ways, like so as for policy that can get ahead, like that would be a teacher, like be a head start besides like having a great connection with the community and like working at summer camp, is that like pretty good, right? Working with kids, that'd be helpful, right?
Mm-hmm. That's very good. And most summer camps, most YMCA's, they'll have youth programs where you're actually teaching. You're teaching something, or you're tutoring a student. You're helping them. And some schools and universities have good connections with the local school district and can kind of put you in touch with that district and say, hey, here's a kid who wants to tutor a middle school student, high school student. They're really good at math. Maybe if you have a struggling math student, this might be beneficial. It might work out for both of you. So you get that extra experience, and that struggling student gets that extra support for things.
My next question is how does planning work? Like, do you guys plan out for the whole school year, or do you do about day by day or week by week?
That's an excellent question.
So at my school, we do it week by week. But like we do an overview, so I talked about PLCs. So for example, last week in PLCs, we planned out our pacing. So where we need to be by this date. So we decided by the end of this 9 weeks, so before students get their report cards, I need to have taught this many units or this many standards. So that's like a pacing guide, but actually planning the lesson and what we're going to do to teach that standard. At my school, we do it week by week. So every Monday, we have to have our lesson plans turned in by the end of the day for that week. So we'll start planning this week for next week.
So you never want to, they call it laminate your lesson plans. Have you ever seen anything laminated? It's kind of got that permanent, if I write on a piece of paper and I laminate it, I can't go back and change it. So you don't want to have the same dusty, dry lesson for 10 years in a row, because you're not going to reach those kids. It may have worked the first year. By the second year, those kids learn totally different. Or it may have worked your first class, but by the end of the day, that class learns totally different. So you have as far as planning goes, you have long-term goals, long-term pacing. By about this date, I need to have had taught these standards. We need to be about this far in our content if the students are progressing the way that they need to be. If they're not, you're not moving on until they master what they're supposed to, what they need to. Because if they can't master what they need to and they move on to the next one, they're not going to be successful with the next one. You have to give them that support. So you never want to set it in stone and concrete it or laminate it. You always want to take into account the needs of the students in front of you at that time and how they learn.
How can you make students want to learn and not like feel dozed off or bored?
That was a pet peeve of yours. Or do you want me to?
It's tough. Yeah, you can go first. So I'm still learning how to do that.
Okay. So, my first job, the administrator there, wonderful person, gave me a lot of support, a lot of advice to help me grow as a professional. And one of the first things she said to me was, our goal is 100% engagement in every class, every day. So I take that statement and I turn around, and the first thing I thought of runs through my mind, oh my Lord, how is that possible? Because they never talked about that in student teaching. They never talked about that when I was getting ready to be a teacher, and I'll bring that up to some teachers that have been veteran teachers that have been teaching for a while. 100% engagement, every class, every day. Well, how's that possible? It is possible. It is possible. Students, how do you get that engagement? That's what you asked, right? So it's very easy for students to daydream about anything, particularly in middle school, I found out. So it's almost lunchtime. What do they have in the cafeteria? Oh, wait, I'm supposed to be doing my reading homework. No, was that a squirrel I just saw outside? Did you watch that show yesterday? Or anything. I mean, it could be anything. So the first thing, if you have a lesson that is truly engaging, it'll be a lesson that gets them kind of excited and makes them want to do more. So they don't want to think about the cafeteria tacos waiting at lunch. They want to think about, well, what's the next step in our process, or what are we going to find out on the next level, or what's going to happen in the next reading passage, or whatever. Are we going to beat this team at that? Are we going to, if you get them excited about what they're learning, then the engagement will just follow along with it. And it's kind of, don't take me wrong, I don't mean that you're not doing anything to engage them. But if you're exciting them, you're engaging them. And that excitement will lead to them engaging themselves.
So specifically, I try to get to know the students, like what are their interests, what do they like to do. In elementary school, it sometimes comes down to they just need to get up and move around a little bit, get some blood flowing to their brains because they're still a little antsy at the younger ages. So I have to do movement breaks. Like my math lesson, they're constantly going back and forth between their seats and their carpet. I don't try to keep them on the carpet too long. I don't try to keep them at their seats for too long. I have to give them time to talk to their neighbor because if I don't let them have time, they're going to have anything when I don't want them to have that time. So I'm constantly making sure that they're up and moving, getting chances to talk about content. I try to be a little lenient about, when they're transitioning really quickly, letting them, talk a little bit about something that they may want to, or giving them the opportunity to move when they need to. I know technology is big. Anytime you put a computer in front of a student, they're going to be interested in what's next. That's big now. It's hard to do at the elementary level. At the middle school where our student taught, they are one-to-one Chromebook. So each student has their own personal Chromebook. So it was really interesting to be able to help plan lessons and put some things online. The students really enjoyed that. But when I got down to the elementary level, I have 6 Chromebooks for my whole class. And I'm one of the schools that's lucky enough for that. I mean, I know there are a lot of districts in Kentucky that they don't even have that. So we are able to use those sometimes. That helps with engagement. But I myself am still learning different ways to keep students engaged all the time. But I think digging in and really figuring out what students like to do and really focusing on their interests helps a lot.
Making that connection.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask this. Is it better to start working right away before getting your master's, or get your master's then start working, or do it at the same time?
My experience has been extremely pleasant. My experience really, it depends on your master's. So that being said, if I want to be the best teacher that I can be, okay, not only am I teaching, but I'm also finding ways to grow professionally, professional development opportunities, and sometimes college courses specifically don't always address some of the needed areas that you need to focus on. So my kids' reading comprehension is just super low. And I'm just using that as a made up example. Okay. How do I specifically address getting that reading comprehension up? Well, my master's classes may be a master's in history. They're not addressing how to get my reading comprehension up. They're addressing historical topics and me researching those topics and then communicating that, but it's not, I can't apply that immediately. So on one hand, I can see the benefits of waiting, especially a first year teacher. We don't have the state Kentucky teacher internship program anymore, the old K-TIP program that all first year teachers had to go through. But many districts are doing it anyway, and they're doing their own county intern program. So you have this, it's almost like a college class that you're doing while you're teaching. Plus you're adding your master's degree onto that if you're doing that. So I can see the benefits of waiting. On the flip side, my particular master's it directly involves my classroom, and I'm able to take things from the master's program and apply it to my classroom, and I'm able to take things from my classroom and help me in my master's concepts. So I can see the benefits of doing it at the same time too. It's all about the direction that you're moving in personally.
I'm personally waiting because I wanted to get through my first year, because your first year, honestly, it's really hard. It's a big change. You go from student teaching to, oh my goodness, I have 20 to 30 students all myself. It's just me in here. So that's a big change. So I wanted to get through my first year of teaching before I started my master's. I currently haven't started it. I do plan to go back eventually. I'm just trying to decide what I want to get my master's in. So that's a big decision to make. I wouldn't suggest rushing into a decision because you have time to think about it. Kentucky, now you don't have to have your master's. I would suggest getting it. I don't have one yet, but I would still suggest getting it. It may change. You may wait a bit. It may go back to where you have to get it eventually. I'm not sure, but you're always wanting to grow as a teacher when you become a teacher. So that's one way to do that and to show that you want to do more for your students. So I'm not sure when the best time is to go back.
Going back to your first year, can you guys describe what was your first day like? Like finally had your own class in history. Were you guys really nervous, very excited at the same time, or what?
You can.
Okay. So last year was my first year. The first day I was a nervous wreck. I had no idea, how my students were going to be coming in. I had met some of them at Back to School Bash. I did my research, looked in their cumulative folders. I had a little bit of background information, but I didn't know anything personally about them. Were they going to like me? Are they going to listen to me? That was my biggest fear. Like, please let me have a class that's going to have good behavior. But, ultimately you have to put that into place. I learned that very quickly. The first day of school was the fastest day of school ever. It goes by in like 30 minutes, it seems like. You're like, oh, did I eat lunch today? Have I went to the bathroom today? It's super fast first day of school. Going over every single detail of how to walk down the hallway. It sounds ridiculous, but yes, you have to teach them how to walk down the hallway, what you need to do in the bathroom. All of these expectations, what you want from them, but also making them feel at home on the first day of school. You don't want them coming on the first day of school and it being just drilling procedures down their throat all day. You want to get to know them and get them to get to know each other and feel comfortable and have fun that first day of school. At our school, we read the book first 6 weeks of school. It was all about building that community in your classroom. So we didn't start content until probably about 2 weeks into school. We focused on classroom management, building relationships, with the students and the students building relationships with each other. And I couldn't believe how much that affected my classroom management. It was a huge positive impact knowing that the students had respect for me. They knew I had respect for them. They had respect for each other because we spent that time in the beginning building relationships and building that community together. So that was really important on not only the first day of school, but in the weeks following after that too.
So the first day of school of my first year, I was super lucky because I interviewed and got a position at the end of the school year for the following. So I had all summer to adjust to the idea that I was teaching at this school in this grade level and teaching this content. And then during the summer, I could work out all the logistical details that you don't think about during student teaching, and that you don't really discuss because that's not teaching, but it is. So getting a key to the building, getting an alarm code. What do we do if we come into the building outside of hours, after school hours or on the weekends? And, so then you get to thinking, well, why would I be there on the weekend? Believe me, you're there after school, you're there on the weekends, you're there before school, and you don't think about, well, how do I get in? If there's an alarm, where my mailbox is in the school, what paperwork I need to fill out before school starts, what paperwork I need my kids to fill out before school starts. I get all of that logistical stuff worked out over the summer. And then I was excited. So I think the beginning of July, my family and I started going into my room because it's my room. And really it wasn't my room because that was the room I was an elementary student in. So I looked at it as my former teacher's room the whole time I had it. But I go in there and we start working out, the filing cabinet needs to go here, and then this poster goes there, and that poster goes there. And I was super blessed because my wonderful wife basically decorated it for me. And then I sat back the first week, and other teachers who came into the room and looked around, oh, what a lovely room you have, what decoration. My teammate would always chime in, yeah, that's because his wonderful wife came and glued that up there, because if he had done it, it wouldn't be straight, or it wouldn't be. But I remember I was fine until I went to bed the night before, and then I couldn't hardly sleep. And I do that at the beginning of school every year. I can't hardly sleep the night before the first day of school. But I distinctly remember getting in the car and driving to school on the first morning of the first day of the first year, thinking to myself, what if I can't do this? Student teaching, I had somebody in the room with me. What if I go in there and I completely just fall on my face and I just don't know what I'm doing? We'd had back to school night about a week earlier, so I'd already met some of the kids. When they actually started coming into my room is when I started to calm down and started to get with it. And the whole truth of it is you're going to fall on your face, especially your first year. But it's about getting back up and pushing on through that because you're going to grow as a person.
Related to that, you said, so you teach at a school that you grew up?
I did, yes.
Okay, so my question being, have you always thought that you would go back to school that you went to as a child, that you wanted to go and teach there too?
So my school that I attended elementary school at, it's the longest continually operated school in the same location in our district. It used to be a high school. It even says high school in concrete out on the front of the building. Wooden floors. those old polished wooden floors. And yeah, I wanted to be a teacher. I thought about being a teacher. But when I was in that building as a student, I never would have thought I would be back in the building as a teacher, much less in that room. Because as a kid, your teachers aren't even human. I mean, they don't leave the school when you leave. So when you run into them in Kroger and Walmart, and what are you doing here? You mean you leave the building? So I never thought that she was ever going to retire, or she would be teaching there forever. That never entered my head. But it was a real special opportunity for me to be able to go back to that school and back into that room. And it goes a step further. Now your teacher desk is where it's at in the room, is where the computer plug-in is. Back then it wasn't. So where my teacher desk sat, because of the computer plug-in, I couldn't move it, was where my student desk sat. So I was sitting in the same place. And that's part of the reason why it wasn't my room, it was still her room. But yeah, that never would have popped into my head. I was very blessed, very blessed.
Are you in your elementary school here?
Yes, so I also teach at the elementary school I went to. I absolutely love teaching in that school. It feels like a family to me. There are a lot of new teachers there, but especially my first year, I taught alongside teachers that I have in the classroom. So it was really nice to go back and like, hey, I made it. You did a good job. So that was the goal of mine, to eventually end up back in the county, but to be back in the same school, which just taking it a step further. So it's been really awesome.